Hi, I'm William Mills. I'm here at Finovate Spring in San Francisco, and I'm pleased to be joined by my friend Vlad Lounegov, who's CEO of Mbanq. How are you doing today, Vlad?
Very well, thank you very much.
That's terrific. Well, listen, you founded Mbanq in 2016 after a very successful career. Tell us a little bit about your transition from being a consultant into a real FinTech innovator.
Thank you very much for this question, William. So I started my career in professional services around 2006
Right.
in London when I used to consult banks on digital transformation. And then at some point, about 2008, I decided that digital transformation was always driven by technology and technology providers.
Right.
And this is why I moved to the beautiful state of California and Silicon Valley back in 2011. So from 2011, I specifically focused on technology and the driver for innovation being technology.
Right.
So in my consulting career, I spent over a decade advising banks on core banking system.
Really?
However, what I found myself was that we were advising banks to switch from one core system to another, and both are built in the 90s, and
Right.
some of them are as old as 40 years old.
Right.
Imagine that. So at some point in time, I thought there must be another way. So at that point in time, that's about 6 or 7 years ago, in 2016, I thought there is some innovation that's needed in the core banking space. And there was a lot of innovation that was happening on the periphery of the core, like in payments, for example,
Sure.
KYC, digital onboarding, and there are a lot more startups in that area. But nobody was really touching the core.
Right.
So back in 2016, when I founded Mbanq, our focus was on technology. However, over time, any young company pivots so many times, right?
Sure.
And so one of our pivots was towards services. So we founded ourselves to be a technology company first, but we moved into services. And now we have probably the most comprehensive as a service portfolio in the United States market.
So you've got more products and services that you can provide as a service, for banking as a service, than anybody in the States, right?
Correct.
Well, that's what I wanted to think about. Is I think that makes you unique. But what else makes Mbanq unique? And who are some of your key customers that folks may know?
Sure. What makes us unique is that about 2 or 3 years ago, we started focusing on major brands like NFL teams, like
Right.
colleges and universities,
Right.
and helping them bring financial services to their what we call affinity groups, because they're so well positioned with either a student base or a fan base. And now we're launching fan base accounts for some of the big brands.
Now, banking as a service wasn't even talked about here 10 years ago here. Now it seems to be everywhere. What do you see as the future of banking as a service, both in the States and worldwide?
Thank you for this question. So United States market is probably the most lucrative market in the world. However, to be able to launch banking operations in the United States whilst not being a bank, it's very hard. In places like United Kingdom, for example, or Europe, there is always an alternative to a banking license. You can get an e-money institution license, you can get a payment services license, whereas in the United States this doesn't exist. Therefore, United States market relies on a partner bank.
Right.
So once you bring a partner bank into the picture, then this becomes banking as a service. The first iteration of banking as a service was literally providing a partner bank to sponsor financial products and services.
Right.
However, very quickly the industry moved on towards other services, like compliance as a service, because
Right.
you have to be compliant at every step of the way. And compliance in the United States is very complicated.
I've
There-
heard.
There are so many regulators that sometimes you don't even know who regulates who.
Right.
You have the federal regulator, you have the state regulator, you have the financial services regulator. So there's a lot of regulation going on. On the back end of compliance, you also need to be able to handle complaints. You also need to be able to handle disputes, chargebacks, and all of the stuff that nobody really wants to do. There's no value in complaints, right? There's no value in chargebacks.
Right.
But you have to provide it as a part of your
Cost of doing business.
Exactly, you have to provide this as part of your banking as a service value proposition.
Right.
So right now we have probably the most comprehensive banking as a service value proposition. However, to answer your question, moving forward, the biggest driver of value in banking as a service is lending as a service.
Right.
So now almost every BaaS provider wants to go into lending.
Right.
So lending really is the key driver. So if you ask me this question next year, I'll tell you that we are now the lending as a service provider as opposed to banking as a service provider.
Very cool. Well, very cool. Well, you've been a successful entrepreneur in FinTech for quite some time. What advice would you give to younger entrepreneurs that want to create a better FinTech world?
Thank you very much for this question. Yes, that's true. It's been a long time. Well, first of all, you have to be ready to pivot.
Right.
Everybody pivots. I mean, we pivoted. We started off as a technology company, and then soon enough we realized that there's more money to be made in services.
Right.
So now we position ourselves as a services company. Number two, partnerships. You need to embrace partnerships.
Right.
We have some of the most spectacular partnerships in the industry. It's very hard to deliver any value proposition alone. So you have to find like-minded individuals, you have to find like-minded companies, bring them all together, stitch a joint value proposition and bring this to market. And number three, of course, you have to have a product that fits to the market.
Right.
If there's no market for your product, or your product is not really quite there, I think you will struggle. So don't be afraid to try and try again. Don't be afraid to fail. You have to fail, right? So without a failure, there's no success. So, and as we say at Mbanq, success has many fathers and a failure is an orphan.
I think I've heard that before. Lastly, what do you see the biggest challenges facing in the coming years for both traditional banks, challenger banks, and non-banks?
Well, if you talk about the United States, I would say regulation is
Right.
really challenging because there's just so much of it going on. And at the end of the day, you don't know which way it's going to pan out. About 12 months ago, probably same time, everybody was talking about crypto.
Right.
Where is crypto now? It's gone. It's disappeared, right?
Right.
So nobody's talking about crypto. It's a taboo subject right now. Now, is it going to come back? Probably, it can't just go away, but the regulator needs to be ready. So as it stands right now, there is a lot of potential regulation that's likely to happen, including banking as a service. I personally believe that banking as a service, as a discipline, needs to be defined and regulated. So if you ask me this question again, 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, most likely our company, Mbanq, will have some kind of regulation.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Well, Vlad, we really appreciate the time today. And again, we're here at Finovate Spring in San Francisco.